All right, let's talk about the planet's most critical arteries. Now, I'm not talking about rivers or roads, but these narrow strips of water called straits. Think of them as vital choke points that have shaped global trade, history, and, maybe even the future of our climate. I mean, that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? But there's actually a place on Earth where this is a reality. A place where two of the world's greatest powers are just neighbors, separated by only a few kilometers of icy water and a whole day on the calendar. Yep, we're talking about the Bering Strait. But hang on, before we get to that one really unique spot, let's zoom out a little bit. To really get the Bering Strait, you first have to understand what a strait is and why these little waterways are so incredibly important. So a strait is basically a narrow channel that does two things at once. It connects two huge bodies of water, like oceans, and at the same time, it separates two huge land masses. And it's this dual role, connecting the water while separating the land, that makes them some of the most strategic, most fought-over locations on the entire planet. They control the flow of everything: ships, goods, even navies. And when you look at this table, you're really looking at a map of global power. The Strait of Gibraltar, that's the gatekeeper between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, literally separating Africa from Europe. Then you've got Hormuz, which is the world's oil jugular, connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. And the Strait of Malacca, well, that's the superhighway for trade between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Our modern world just wouldn't work without them. Okay, so now let's head north, way north. We're going to one of the most famous straits of all, the Bering Strait. A place that wasn't always a waterway, it was once a bridge that connected two entire worlds. And that's it, just 82 kilometers. At its narrowest point, that's all that separates Asia from North America. We're talking about 51 miles. That's shorter than a lot of people's daily commute. It's a surprisingly tiny gap, but it has a massive history. And its history? Wow, it goes deep. During the last ice age, sea levels were so low that a huge land bridge, called Beringia, was exposed. It's believed that around 20,000 years ago, this is how the very first humans migrated from Asia into the Americas. It took until 1728 for the Danish-Russian explorer Vitus Bering to sail through, which is, of course, how it got the name we use today. But in the 20th century, that ancient bridge became a very modern and very tense barrier. During the Cold War, the Bering Strait completely transformed into one of the most frozen borders on Earth. And get this, check out this incredible geography. Right in the middle of the strait, you have two little islands. Big Diomede, which is part of Russia, and Little Diomede, which is part of the USA. They're less than 4 kilometers apart. You can easily see one from the other. But here's the crazy part. The international date line runs right between them. So when it's Saturday on the American island, it's already Sunday on the Russian one. From Little Diomede, you are literally looking at tomorrow. This quote just says it all. For decades, this border was completely sealed. Indigenous families who had traveled back and forth for generations, for festivals, for trade, to see relatives, they were suddenly cut off. It was this painful separation of culture and community. The free movement that had defined this region for thousands of years just stopped. But after the Cold War started to thaw, that ice curtain began to crack. And with that opening came this whole new chapter in the Strait's story. One defined by these incredible feats of human endurance and adventure. I mean, people have gotten seriously creative, to say the least. Since the border reopened, adventurers have crossed it on foot, over the ice, by swimming in that freezing water, and by sea kayak. There was even one team that drove across in a specially modified amphibious Land Rover. Each one of these crossings is just a testament to that human desire to connect across this incredibly symbolic divide. So back in 1987, right at the height of Cold War tensions, a swimmer named Lynn Cox did the unthinkable. She swam between the two Diomede Islands in dangerously frigid 3.3 degrees Celsius water. Just think how cold that is. It was this powerful act of what people called swim diplomacy, and it actually earned her praise from both Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. It was a small act that really helped melt that ice curtain. So what's next for the Straits? Well, the ideas that have been floated are nothing short of monumental. For more than a century, people have been dreaming of building a permanent crossing, a bridge, or more likely, a tunnel. Others have proposed these massive dams, either to warm up the Arctic or, more recently, to try and save its ice from global warming. And listen, these aren't just some wild fantasies. In 2011, Russia officially approved a project with this price tag: $65 billion. It was for a 103-kilometer tunnel under the strait called the TCKM World Link. If it were ever actually completed, it would be the longest tunnel in the world, physically connecting the continents by rail. It would totally rewrite geopolitical maps.
So, as we've seen, this narrow little stretch of water is so much more than just a line on a map. It's been an ancient migration route, a Cold War frontline, a stage for epic human achievements, and a canvas for some of our wildest engineering dreams. The real question is, which of those identities is going to define its next chapter?